I just went on a date with a guy who tried to rob me. I can't possibly tell anyone I know about this story, so here it goes. 2 years ago, I returned home from my father's funeral. As soon as I opened the door to my apartment, a guy holding a crowbar came out from my kitchen holding my TV. I live in the city, so robberies are common. The guy began shouting at me and he clumsily dropped my TV and began holding the crowbar like it was a baseball bat. I was so stunned at what was happening that I didn't move. The guy screamed at me to empty my pockets. From the stress of the last few days with my father passing away, I simply started crying. Not out of fear at what was happening, but because this was literally the worst time of my life. The worst moment, the worst minute and second. While crying hysterically, I gave the guy my wallet. I just sat on my floor and hugged my knees and told him, through my tears, to take whatever you want. He hesitated, looked down at me. He dropped my wallet and sat down beside me. Immediately, he began to comfort me. He began to apologize. He put my TV back on the table and told me it wasn't damaged. He told me that he lost his job and that his mom needed medicine that he couldn't afford and that they were homeless. He told me all of this while I just wailed. I cried for my father, who was lost. I cried for my future, for it was uncertain. And I cried because my home had been intruded on in the most violent way. For a good 10 minutes, I sat on the floor with a guy who had every intent to rob me, telling me that it would be okay and that he was sorry. He begged me not to call the police. I just started screaming at him to get out. He ran away so fast that he left the crowbar. I threw it after him as he ran down the street. 2 days later, I came home from work and he was sitting in front of my door. I was so terrified that I pulled out my phone. But he had this look on his face of, I'm not sure how to describe it, remorse, regret. He told me that he told his mom what he did, and his mom made me some soup. He handed me this tiny bowl wrapped in tin foil. Again, I was stunned and overwhelmed and angry that I slapped the bowl out of his hands and it shattered on the floor. I told him to leave or I was calling the police. He left. I remember he looked upset. I left the soup and shattered bowl outside my door, almost as a warning for him to not come back. About 3 months after that, I got a note in my mail slot from the guy. He told me his mother had passed away and that he was no longer homeless and that he had a job. He wanted to repay me for breaking into my apartment. He wrote down his address and told me that I was welcome to break into his place if I wanted, but he didn't have much stuff. This all overwhelmed me. I threw away the letter, but I remembered his address. I remember walking by there one day, out of curiosity. It was a ratty apartment building across the city. He was walking up to his room and he saw me. He waved. I turned away and left. He ran after me, apologized again, told me that he never meant to do what he did. He showed me the program from his mother's funeral that he kept in his wallet. He wasn't lying, she was real. He was real. He was a real person. I don't know what it was, but I believed him. We slowly began to grow together as people. I can't describe it. After a year of maintaining communication and learning about who he was, he enrolled in a local community college and began taking courses to earn credits before applying to university. I helped him study for his history class a lot. He's great at math and science, though. I never invited him over to my apartment, however. No matter how much I got to know him, I was still afraid of him. And he knew that. He knew that I couldn't trust him. But tonight, we went out for coffee because he said he had an exam in his World Civ class. When I got there, he said he forgot his book. We just talked for a bit, we laughed, and then he told me he wanted to cook for me. On a whim, I decided to invite him to my apartment. After picking up some things from the grocery store, he came over. I was so nervous that I was shaking. He noticed, he squeezed my hand, and then he made dinner. It was amazing. We talked, we laughed. We sat on the floor and watched a movie on the TV he tried to steal. We made jokes about it. And then he told me that he missed his mom. I gave him a hug. Then he left. I don't know what I feel, but I do know that I can't give up on people anymore. Some people just have the shit end of life. Maybe things have a way of working themselves out. And I miss my dad, too. Update. I am beside myself to log on this morning and see this at the top of this page. I have been a Redditor for a few years, but never thought this would happen. Also, to those of you who are messaging, commenting to confirm the validity of this, I guess it never occurred to me when I wrote this that it sounded so ridiculous. It really does. I don't blame you for saying it's false, but it's real. He's real. I'm real. It all happened, is happening currently. Thank you all who have messaged me and commented. And thank you to the 2 people that gave me gold. This is just insane to me. I'm so grateful, so very grateful. Edit 2. Sorry for neglecting this. Today has been insane with work and hosting a friend's bridal shower. I want to clarify a few things about this because I am getting a lot of messages about a lot of different things. People are saying that I am being too trusting of him after what happened. You're right, I suppose. I mean, I live in the heart of one of the most dangerous cities. My friend was robbed just a few years ago and was actually physically injured as a result of it, so me trusting him did not constitute me giving him a hug after he broke in. It was much, much more than that. My dad died of a brain aneurysm in March 2 years ago. He passed away peacefully in his sleep. The thing about my dad, though, was that he was the most generous, most kindest man in this world. I know people like to say that about their parents, but it's true about my dad. When I was 4, I remember him giving these guys a ride from prison. They were released after serving their sentence, but had to walk to get to where they were going. My dad picked them up, had them hop in the back of his pickup truck, and took them home. He put his life, and basically mine, at the hands of these people who could have hurt us. They didn't, thank God. My dad taught me to be selfless and understanding of the world and of people, and I loved him for that. But when I lost him, it shattered me and turned me into an entirely different person. After my dad died, I became severely depressed and angry. I was angry at everything. I had to take a leave from my job. I teach 2nd grade. All day, I would lay in bed and think about how much I hated God, or whatever higher power, for taking my dad away. Nothing seemed worth it. After the guy, which is now my friend, broke into my apartment, I hated him for a while. I hated my dad for making me so trusting, because I didn't call the cops on the guy. I hated my dad for dying. I hated him for being so incredibly compassionate and better than me. I hated myself for being vulnerable. I just hated everything. The guy who tried to rob me as a person. And of course, I constantly ask myself when I'm with him, what happens if he tries to hurt me or rob me again? But the thing about him is that he knows I'm thinking this, and he constantly tries to reassure me. We have grown together as people, as I said. There's a whole 2 years that I didn't post in this recounting because it would be like a novel-length post. Do I like him? I don't think so. I don't think he likes me. I think we both understand, respect, and honor the other for our mutual struggles. We're proud of each other, and we're both guilty of things. Me for shutting out my friends, family, and students and becoming an awful person after I lost my dad, and him for going to incredible lengths to try and save his mother from experiencing incredible agony in her final moments. I intend to show him this post. I want him to know. He doesn't have a computer or internet, but I think he'll find this humorous. His story is not mine to tell. How his mother died is not my story to tell. What exactly drove him to pry open my front door with a crowbar is not for me to tell. What happened to his family is not for me to tell. But what is for me to tell is that he is a human. He is flawed. God, he's so flawed. But after knowing him and learning about his life, about his childhood and the tiny little child who used to be so passionate about school and learning as he was, as he told me, I know that he has his story. I have my story. You have yours. And although I think it is irrelevant, the thought of even dating after the last few years hasn't crossed my mind. Was I involved in relationships prior to my dad's passing? Yes. One was long-term and had a foreseeable end with an engagement, but things happen. Life happens. I'm meeting with him tomorrow at his work, while he's on break, to give him some old study materials that I have from a literature class I took in college. It's all so normal, and I'm not afraid. My dad was never afraid, so I shouldn't have to be. I choose not to be. Update 2. Hey, so I posted a couple of days ago about how I went on a date with this guy who tried to rob me. This is just a quick follow-up. Nothing major. Last night, I showed him the post and some of the comments from you guys. He was a little apprehensive about this place and the fact that I had shared this with the entire world. But the comments really made him so happy. He wanted me to thank you all, and I tried to get him to make a post of his own, but he thinks it's too weird. Plus, he considers himself a bad speller. I just wanted to update everyone with this little unimportant tidbit. My dad's birthday is in a few weeks. I always have to prepare myself for it year-round, really. But this year is different because I know I have people to support me, especially a really close, new friend who came, well, I'd like to say out of nowhere, but he really just came out of my kitchen holding a crowbar. One more thing, when I showed him the post, he looked up at me and went, wait, it was a date. And I got so embarrassed. Then he laughed and told me that he was relieved because he thought it was a date. We haven't talked about anything else along the lines of dating in the future. I just wanted to extend my gratitude, my thanks, and my love, as well as his, to you all. Thank you, thank you. Update 3. I've been trying to write this for the past 3 months, but I always kept getting busy. I truly don't know what to say because so much has happened in the 6 months since I wrote all this down for the first time. I want to say this for me, to get this off my chest. I cared about him. I cared for him. I did. I can't deny that. In January, right after the new year started, I got a phone call at 2:30 in the morning from him. He was in jail. He and two of his friends were arrested for public intoxication and possession of drug paraphernalia. He wanted me to bail him out. I'm a teacher living on a teacher's salary. I said no, I couldn't. This is when things fell apart. Before then, he and I had been incredibly close. We spent Christmas together. I didn't have enough money for a plane ticket home, so I stayed in the city. He came over, we cooked, watched movies. Before Christmas, we spent Thanksgiving together. I helped him study. I helped him get his finances in order. He had no idea how to do taxes and how to do all of the adult stuff, as he said. But I noticed I started doing things I didn't normally do. He would come over in the middle of the night, visibly panicked, and ask if he could stay with me. I let him, no questions asked. I stopped asking questions because I wanted to believe that he was good and everything was fine. He started asking me that if others asked about him if I would lie and say I didn't know him. This scared me, but I assumed it was about work stuff. I wanted it to be his work stuff. He was released from jail about a week later. He didn't talk to me. I called his apartment. Nothing. I came home from work one day and a woman was waiting outside my door. She appeared disheveled. She was wearing a tank top and flip-flops in mid-January in the Northeast. It was cold. When I tried to key into my apartment, she started verbally attacking me. She told me to stay away from him, like she owned him. She told me that she knew what I did to him, and that I would get what's coming. She left. I was scared out of my mind. Before calling the police, I decided to call his apartment one last time. He answered. I told him about the woman. He apologized, said that he was seeing her. He didn't intend for her to come over and interfere. But that led me to another question. How did she know where I lived? And how many others had he told where I lived? He hesitated before answering. I remember that. He just said he was sorry. I immediately packed an overnight bag, grabbed my most valuable items, and went to stay in a hotel. I used my credit card, my only in case of emergencies card, because I no longer felt safe because of him. I came back to my apartment the next day. Everything was fine. He came over to apologize. I told him to get out. I started crying. When I'm angry, I cry. He tried to hug me, but I remember picking up a piece of wood to protect myself. I demanded to know what he was doing. He told me he was selling drugs. He told me that he had to do it because he knew people that would hurt him. Lies, I guess. I don't know. I told him to get out, never want to see him again, etc., etc. He got angry, threatened to come back with his friends. I was racked with guilt for trusting him. He apologized again, said he was sorry. I was questioning everything about him. I pushed him out, locked the door. The teaching program I'm a part of rotates teachers in and out of schools across the country. Last year, I put in a request to move across the country to be closer to home. 2 weeks after this encounter with him, I found out that my request was accepted and I was set to leave in March. My apartment was broken into and vandalized in early February. At night, he would come and knock on my door. I would call the police, but he would always leave before they got there. His guys started harassing me. Nothing was ever stolen, just broken. They broke a glass bottle my dad made for me when I was 6. He knew how much that meant to me. It was shattered. The week before I left, I saw him outside my building. I called the police. He was walking over to me, and I remember having this fiery rage in me. It was this impassioned, red, angry heat that washed over me, and I took my keys and I just started hitting him. I ended up cracking his eye socket. When the police questioned him, they realized he was the one that was harassing me. He was wanted for a myriad of other charges. After he fell down, I started kicking him. I wanted him to die. I really did. Then I thought about what my dad would think. But then I realized I'm not my dad. I will never be him. I'm different. This is different. People are different. Not all of them are good, but some of them are. I am good. I am a good person. Right now I'm sitting in my new apartment in a brand new city. It's warm. Rent is cheaper. I live in a neighborhood of old people. They're nice. They love that I teach kids. It makes them feel safe, I guess. Some days I leave my front door open and let in a breeze. I'm never afraid. The beach is literally a 7-minute walk from my back door. I'm happy, so I'm putting this to rest. It's done. It's over. I'm tired. I'm posting this and not checking back anymore. I just wanted to tell someone, because no one in my personal life even knew this was happening. I still can't believe it happened, but it did, and it's done. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, this is a sad story and an example of really needing to understand what good is. OP was able to finally understand that she don't need to be her dad. To take her example, her dad had strangers in a car with a small child, with no worry for that young child. Yeah, that's nice and good, but it's extremely risky for her especially. Goodness that costs others more than it costs you isn't all that good. but it's the type of goodness that we're told to aspire to, without examination of how we can be harmed. It's the kind of goodness that's taken advantage of by abusers. But even without arguing that, OP didn't ever need to do the same to be a good person. One can be good without sacrificing their safety. People can be good without giving away pieces of themselves. You can be good and have a sense of self-preservation. She was doing well at first enforcing her boundaries, and grief and this toxic asshole broke that down. But eventually she got it back before it was too late. I feel so bad for her, as someone that was raised to aspire to that kind of goodness and had to unlearn it to have any sense of self-preservation. I hate what this asshole friend did to her, but I'm glad she was able to be safe and learn an important lesson. Opinion number 2 says, I know so many people like him. They really do try to be good. It's not an act, it's real. They want to be better people. And for a while at least, they even are. But they just don't really know how, and they just make bad decision after bad decision. And ultimately, we are the choices we make. Nobody is just one thing. We are far more complex than that. But some people can't seem to get out of their own way long enough to stack up enough good decisions to start seeing them pay off in ways that make it easier to actually make some better choices. It's sad, at least it makes me sad anyway. At the end of the day, you can't live someone else's life for them. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. I'm sad for OP. How things ended was terrible. How things started was also terrible. But that in between, for a while anyway, I think he really was trying to be a better person, and I think he really did care about her. It wasn't enough, though. I'm glad she is safe and away from him. He is clearly a dangerous acquaintance to have. Opinion number 3 says, don't fault yourself for what you went through. I can tell you the following with 100% certainty. That man had you targeted for this from the very moment you sat down crying and offered for him to take whatever he wanted without any fight from you. He wasn't just a dumb criminal though. No, he was way worse than that. He was the kind of terrible person who could practically smell a young woman who is the type to give and give herself, her money, everything just to help another human being. You sat down and cried, helpless. And he figured, I can rob her once and get away with just this TV. Or, I can try to turn this thing around somehow, get her to like me and care about me, and I'll be able to get so much more than just a TV to hawk. And that's exactly what he did. His suspicion about you being a perfect target was only further cemented when you told him about your father's passing. And yes, maybe he did have a mother who passed too, but trust that not a single thing he did, said, saved to show you, none of it was without some hidden motive. And when you realized what he'd been doing and you got angry enough to tell him off, once he knew the goose that laid the golden egg had flown. That's when the friends started breaking in, when he started saying the awful things and showing his anger, when he realized he could squeeze nothing more out of you. You're lucky. You escaped with your health, current safety, and an unfortunate load of life experience that many people never achieve. So many people have never truly seen the dark side of humanity. You caught a glimpse. Now use that experience to move forward. The warning signs, learn them. Check out websites about domestic violence. They'll show you the big glaring warning signs that can help you identify when someone is truly not someone you want to have in your life. But most of all, please, let this be a lesson to you. Never ignore your gut instinct. I'm willing to bet that throughout the majority of the times you saw him, whether he showed up unplanned in the beginning or later on when you expected him to come over, you always had to noticeably squash down an uneasy feeling in your stomach. You knew something wasn't right, but you didn't want to leave a fellow human being alone out in the world. You wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I understand that wholeheartedly, but I'm telling you now, give no benefits of the doubt. If your gut instinct is telling you something, somehow, some way about this person just isn't right, listen to it. Your gut is almost never wrong. It's an instinctual tool that has remained within us for millions of years. Don't ignore it. I'm very glad you're in a new town, safe and mending from this awful situation. Like I said at the beginning, don't fault yourself for what transpired. But don't let it ever happen to you again, okay? Sending lots of positivity from one former gut-ignoring female to another. P.S. A phenomenal read is a book called The Gift of Fear. It's all about how our gut instinct is so important and how fear is an awesome first warning signal for dangerous situations even today. You don't have to be a caveman to use instinct to avoid danger. How about you guys? What do you think? Leave a comment and let's discuss down below. If you enjoyed it, maybe subscribe and leave a like. It will help my channel a lot and motivate me to make more for you. Thanks for listening and take care.